Chapter 11. Plan your life the way you plan your vacation. What's a vacation? Maybe you go to the beach for fun and relaxation, or to a new city for adventure and enlightenment. But it takes a lot of effort to pack up supplies for your life on the beach. It's an alien environment for most people, and you may have to get used to new things like the sun and the noise and the sand in your sheets. Still, you go to all that trouble because it's fun. It takes a lot of effort to travel to a new city. You must have a map to get around. You can get confused on the one-way streets and hidden expressway ramps. You can spend half a day walking to the top of the Empire State Building or up every monument step in Washington, D.C. All in all, it's a very hard job, but you do it because it's an adventure. Some people walk miles across a strange European city when they take a cab for a 3-block journey back home. They say they do it because it's a vacation. And vacations are for expanding your horizon and learning about new things. Why can't you approach every day of your professional life with the same enthusiasm and spirit of adventure you devote to the hard job of vacationing? Why can't you expand your horizons, learn about new things, and most of all, have fun? Well, I think you can. There are only 3 prerequisites. First, you have to pick a job that you truly love, something that challenges and fulfills your individual strengths. Second, you have to plan that workday with the same kind of detail you use when planning a vacation. And third, you have to start looking at your career as if you expect to have some excitement and fun. Picking a job that you love is both simple and difficult. The difficulty comes when you must sit down and decide who you are and what makes you happy. After you've figured that out, finding a job that fits is relatively simple. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to pretend I know how you should discover your inner self. But I believe a good place to start is by recognizing your real strengths and by recognizing those things that are most important to you. As you know, I'm a great believer in making lists. And when I'm confused or troubled by a decision, I list all the advantages and disadvantages of a specific solution. Somehow, it helps me think more clearly when I can see facts on paper. For instance, I knew from an early age that I wanted to pursue a profession in which I could help people, compete against myself, and meet great challenges, and make a reasonable living for my family. At first, I thought it might be medicine, but I discovered that those same needs were met first in my sales career and when I began my own business. After I had discovered what I wanted from work, I had to have a plan. Have you ever had one of these Saturdays when you got up in the morning and didn't have a single thing planned for the day? You drift from one thing to another, and by the end of the day, you realize you hadn't accomplished a thing. You felt empty, depressed, and frustrated. You wasted a day that you'll never get a chance to relive. Well, just as you drifted through an entire day, some people drift through a week, a month, a year, even a lifetime. Yet those same people may do a great job of planning their vacations. Suppose your husband comes home from work one day and announces, "Honey, I have 2 weeks vacation starting August 1st. Suddenly, you have a lot of plans. Oh, wonderful, let's see. Where shall we go? How are we going to get there? Where shall we stay? What kind of clothes will the children need?" Every single detail is worked out. You plan that vacation down to the last item. On the first vacation day, you know exactly what you are going to do, and as a result, you have a successful trip. But what happens when you get home? You fall back into the same old routine. You get up in the morning and hurry off to the same old job, come home in the evening with nothing planned, watch television, go to bed, the next day follow the same pattern. At the end of the week, nothing's changed, and you're right back to where you were on Monday. At the end of the month, at the end of the year, you're just where you were the year before. Without goals, you can waste an entire lifetime with nothing to show but feeling a feeling of frustration and dissatisfaction. If you're going to drive to your vacation destination, you wouldn't start without a roadmap. The same should be true for your life. Without a plan or a roadmap, you will never get where you want to go. To accomplish anything significant, you must sit down and decide what you want from life. These are your long-term goals. And as with your $35,000 list, getting them on paper makes them more concrete. Often when people list long-term goals, they seem overwhelming. But as the old Chinese proverb relates, the longest journey begins with a single step. In other words, to accomplish great things, you must achieve one small goal at a time. New consultants joining Mary Kay Cosmetics are urged to hold 5 skincare classes during their first week in business. It's important to set realistic short-term goals that you can actually attain. Then go on to bigger goals as you gain self-confidence. At the same time, a good goal is like a strenuous exercise. It makes you stretch. Goals should be slightly out of reach to be of maximum value. When I say shoot for the moon, I don't mean that you should set ridiculous goals. Set goals that you can obtain, but stretch yourself. Remember, if you shoot for the moon and miss, you will always be among beautiful stars. At a recent sales conference, I talked to a beauty consultant who was just so enthusiastic and so excited by what she had heard there that she had decided to go home and shoot for the moon. She wanted to start producing $1,000 a week in retail sales. The only problem was that at the time, she was producing an average of $400 a week. I suggested that a smaller, more realistic goal of $500 per week might be more appropriate. I reminded her of another old saying, inch by inch, it's a cinch, but yard by yard, it's hard. Don't just look at the $500 figure, I told her. Break it down into daily goals. $500 a week represents a daily goal of $100. You should book a class for every day, and if you don't reach the $100 goal, come home and begin calling your customers for reorders until you do. No matter what the final goal, it's very important to set attainable goals, then meet them. If you fall behind your goal by $20 one day and $40 the next, you soon feel so far behind that you'll probably just give up. In another example, a very ambitious young woman approached me for advice about beginning a business. She had some retail experience, and it was her goal to open a national chain of dress shops. She told me about her plans to open in several large cities and eventually expanding even to Canada. But not once did she mention how she was going to operate her first store. Finally, I said, why don't you concentrate on doing a bang-up job on just one dress shop in your hometown? Really learn how to operate a single store. Then, when you've achieved that, you can plan to open a second and a third and so on. In the meantime, trial and error will help iron out any significant problems. After you have several stores successfully operating in your own city, expand to another city, and later you can move into the neighboring states. If you proceed in this manner, one step at a time, you will eventually be in charge of your national chain. I told this young entrepreneur that she should set her sights on short-term attainable goals. Otherwise, that great big lifetime dream would be overwhelming. It's great to think big, but take care to break that big goal into smaller goals or plateaus that you can achieve by stretching yourself. This chapter seems to contain several old sayings. Well, here's another. You can eat an elephant one bite at a time. The world is full of people who are very quick to dream and very slow to act. Often it's because they have failed to break big goals into manageable goals, but more often it's a fear of failure. Many people are so afraid of failure that they never try anything. You can only overcome such fear if you are willing to get up and get started. The death of fear is in doing what you fear to do. Yes, you're going to make mistakes along the way, but you'll also be learning. And as I said earlier, we fail forward to success. You will make mistakes, and sometimes you will be frustrated as you work towards your goals, but for every failure, there's an alternative course of action. You just have to find it. When you come to a roadblock, take a detour. Go in another direction. Don't let the stumbling block stop you. Go over, under, around, or through it, but don't give up. Have confidence in yourself, and you'll find another route. Remember, obstacles either polish us up or wear us down. A diamond was once just a hunk of coal until it was put under pressure and polished to perfection. In the previous chapter, I spoke about the importance of putting your daily plan on paper, that $35,000 list of your 6 most important tasks. I believe that you can even extend that principle a bit further. I used to take a bar of soap and write my weekly goals on the bathroom mirror each week. I set my goals and then put them right up there in front of me for the whole family to see. If my goal was 10 skincare classes during the week, I put it right up there on the mirror. Then as I held each class, I made a hash mark to indicate where I stood. Having that visual reminder really crystallized my thoughts. I found that if I lost a booking, I'd make every attempt to get a new one for that week because I expected myself to hold 10 classes. I did the same with other goals. If I wanted to recruit 2 new people the next week, I wrote it on the mirror. I found that I look at the mirror quite often, but I didn't stop there. I also wrote my goals on note cards and attached them to the sun visor in my car, on my refrigerator, and on my desk. I kept them everywhere to constantly remind myself and everyone else of what I wanted to do for the week. Soon, those goals would be so deeply embedded into my subconscious mind that everything I did was naturally geared towards helping me reach them. I automatically did the right things because I programmed myself to succeed. I've had people tell me that they wouldn't dream of broadcasting their goals like that. What if they should fail? But I believe it helps to let others know what you intend to do. To illustrate my point, let me tell you about an experience I had when I first began my sales career. I had been with Stanley Home Products for 3 weeks, and I wanted to attend the company's annual convention in Dallas. At this point, I was averaging about $7 a party, so I knew I had a lot to learn, and I thought the convention would be a good place to start. The cost of the trip was $12, including the chartered train fare for round trip to Houston to Dallas, and 3 nights at the hotel. So you know how long ago that was. I didn't have $12, so I had to borrow it from a friend who first gave me a sermon about how I should be spending the money on shoes for the children instead of running off to some wicked convention like men go to. I had only one other dress and no suitcase, so I emptied my Stanley case and packed my things. I didn't know whether or not the $12 included food, so I packed a pound of cheese and a box of crackers just in case. To this day, I feel more comfortable if I have cheese and crackers in my room because I had no extra money. All the hotel bellman got for carrying my case was a very sweet thank you. That didn't go over any better then than it would now. But the trip was worth it because those 3 days changed my life. I watched them crown the top salesperson queen of sales and present her with the Supreme Sales Award, a beautiful alligator handbag. With every fiber of my being, I wanted to be standing in that spotlight. I sat in the back of the row seat because since I was so far down the ladder, that's where I belonged. I had only been with the company for 3 weeks, and my $7 party average was about as low as you could go. The queen and I were opposite in every way. She was tall, thin, brunette, and successful. I was neither tall nor thin, and I was probably the most unsuccessful person in the room. But I was so impressed with the crown, the alligator bag, and most of the recognition bestowed upon the queen that I vowed on the spot the next year I would be the queen. Among the things they told us that day was, hitch your wagon to a star. I hitched to that queen so hard she must have felt it, even from the back row. Another principle they taught us was to get a railroad track to run on. At that time, Stanley didn't have a sales manual or written guide to follow, and I needed a railroad track. So afterwards, I went up to the Queen of Sales and begged her to put on a Stanley party one night so that I could learn from her. She agreed, probably because my admiration was so obvious, and at her demonstration, I took 19 pages of notes. That sales demonstration became my railroad track, and those notes became my springboard to success. The final lesson I learned at that convention was, tell somebody what you are going to do. I could immediately see that this is very important in setting personal goals. After all, you should broadcast your goals, not keep them secret. So I thought, well, who do I tell? I decided that if I was going to tell someone, it might as well be the president of the company. Can you imagine? There were 1,000 people at that convention, and among them sat little Mary Kay wearing a hat so awful that my associates laughed about it for 10 years. And the worst of it was that I didn't know they were laughing for the first 9. Nevertheless, I straightened that hat and marched up to the president, Frank Stanley Beveridge, and said, next year I'm going to be the queen. He should have laughed. I must have looked ridiculous. And if he'd known that he was talking to the newest salesperson with a $7 Stanley party average, he probably would have laughed. But instead, he shook my hand, held it for a moment, looked squarely in the eye, and said, somehow I think you will. Those few words literally changed my life. He probably forgot the incident within 5 minutes, but his words were inscribed in my memory. I broadcast my goal, and the president of the company thought that I could do it. After that, I could not let him down. Throughout the following year, I failed forward to success. I took my 19 pages of notes and memorized them. Although our personalities were very different, I could see that the words of the Queen of Sales were much better than my own. Obviously, she had succeeded where I had failed, so I used her words, and my sales immediately jumped from $7 to $28 a party. Her presentation became my railroad track until I could work out my own. At the end of that year, I really was the Queen of Sales. You remember that the previous year, they had given the Queen an alligator bag. Well, such an expensive handbag was far beyond my financial means, so I set my heart on winning it. I even carried a picture of a similar alligator bag and used it to remind myself of the goal. And wouldn't you know, they changed the prize and gave me something else. I can't even remember what it was. I just know that it wasn't the alligator bag. Bag or not, I had become Queen of Sales by setting a goal, breaking it down into small realistic tasks, and broadcasting it to the world. At Mary Kay Cosmetic, we've always believed in spelling out just what one must do to move up the ladder of success. This makes it easy for our consultants to set their own personal goals. One of the things that had always bothered me about other companies was how nobody ever told you what you had to do to advance. You just had to work and wait until someone finally said, surprise, you're a manager. I decided that if someone knew what she had to do to be successful, she would do it. She would have direction. If you select a career that meets your personal needs, and if you carefully plan the steps you should take to reach your goals, having fun with your work will naturally flow. To me, life is no brief candle. It's a splendid torch that I want to burn brightly before I pass it to the future generations.